Hi, this is Andrew Smith, instructor at Ferris State University and runner of artbysmitty.com. This is going to be part 2 in the Sculpting Human Anatomy Skull series. In part 1, I showed you guys how to get to this point, blocking out a standard polysphere, setting up your reference planes, and using a few different brushes. In this video, we're going to attempt to block out most of the major forms in the skull, extract the mandible from the rest of the skull or cranium, and we're going to start talking and pointing out a few of the different anatomical masses within the skull. Something I should have mentioned in the first video, this whole entire series is for probably intermediate ZBrush artists, possibly beginning ZBrush artists. So to get started, let's go ahead and come over here and just grab, go into ortho view, come down here, and I need to activate my clay tubes brush, and I'm going to make sure symmetry's on by hitting X. There we go. And then I'm just gonna do a subtraction out of the ocular cavity here, and I'm just going to start carving this shape out. My model's around 145,000 tries, which is cool, and I like the clay tube brush because I get really interesting textures going on here in my model. That looks kind of cool. And then skulls in general are pretty organic anyways, right? So I think that using a clay buildup brush is pretty awesome. Now if I turn off my floor, kind of zoom in here, I'm getting a lot of crazy terrible looking faceting, so I'm going to subdivide maybe two more times and start to sculpt on this high poly model. It's kind of I guess the process has changed a little bit since back in the day when we used to have to work low to high all the time. But Dynamesh and ZRemesh have kind of relieved us of those burdens, which is a good thing. So I'm continuing to carve, in the center here. I try not to carve as much because it's more of a subtle slope, and then the ocular cavity indents quite a bit towards the outside of the skull. Again, taking a look at the top of my skull, always making sure we've got that egg shape going on. There we go. That's looking a little bit better. Cool. So we've got the eyes in, and guys, it's worth noting again, right, that I'm using my perspective skull reference, and now I've done a little bit of research, and I'm kind of thinking that this is a female skull. Because of the more round shapes found here in the mandible and the maxilla bone up here. One of the other kind of telltale signs here is I'm not sure if you guys can see this in the video, but I've kind of got a temporal line here, and there's muscles that attach to the skull here. If you try moving your hairline back, you in your eyes, you can kind of feel those muscles being used. In females, that temporal line is pretty round and smooth like it is here. In males, it's much more defined and obvious. So I'm almost positive we're looking at a female skull. And a lot of my reference and what I feel comfortable doing is I'd prefer to do a male skull. So I might exaggerate some of these proportions, and I might make the maxilla bone a little less bubbly, I guess, and a little bit more flat and toned in and pushed into the face a bit. Because I'd prefer to do a male skull. I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm just better at doing males. So anyways, let's keep going. I've been carving in the ocular cavities. Right here we've got obviously the giant frontal bone up here on the forehead. Let's make sure we're using the clay tube brush here. Like to build up the brows above, I should say at the bottom of the frontal bone. Usually something around here, very subtly. And again, I really like the clay tube brush for building up the basic shapes in the skull. Later on, we can smooth this uniformly and get some cool looking results. Again, guys, remember the skull's organic. It's okay to have blemishes and errors and stuff. As long as we have the basic forms and contours right, we'll be alright. We'll be good to go. Okay, let's check this guy from the side view. So we've got this big concave area right here, right? So we've got this, if I could just sculpt a little bit, we've got this zygomatic bone that kind of comes down here, connects to the side of the ocular cavity, and kind of even starts to help develop some of that, it almost runs into some of the maxilla bone, which is this whole front part here, right? So anyways, I just kind of like to block that guy in a little bit, and then I'll hold Alt and kind of start to carve out this section here. And you guys, in my reference, right, you can actually see where the frontal bone right here is located, and then you can also start to see where the parietal bone, right, this guy is. Finally, in the back, we've got the occipital bone, right? And so this guy back here, kind of defined by those cracks. And then we got the temporal bone, which is this big guy right here on the side. So the temporal line kind of follows that bone, and in males, it's obviously a little bit more defined than it is here. Finally, we've got this, if you guys, it's kind of hard to see, but we've got this line here, and so this whole section right there, that is going to be our sphenoid bone, right? And so that's the bone that kind of carves in, and they can kind of call this whole area in here the sphenoid process. So we just want to make sure that we're indenting this. And now I could do this a number of ways. I could simply sculpt, turn my floor off to see my results. Or I could start, if you guys are advanced enough, you know, you guys could actually come in over here using the trim and the slicing brushes to isolate areas with polygroups, and then just using edge loops and group loops, pushing those guys in really quickly. I'm going to try and keep this to a somewhat intermediate tutorial and whatnot, and we're going to keep it pretty much just sculpting and kind of limit it to that. But if you're aware of those techniques, it's a fantastic technique. So let's keep going. Coming in here to the front, grabbing my clay tubes brush, you know, I can see that right now. So my zygomatic bone is needs to stick out quite a bit, actually, right? that whole guy needs to come out in play. There we go. So let's make sure that we've given him the proper adjustments. And let's really make sure that this part here is caved in. It actually goes in quite a bit. And actually, you know, your whole zygomatic bone actually has a big hole right here. So I want to make sure that this is extruding out. And we're actually going to cut a hole right there later on in probably the next video. This video, I just wanted to kind of cover some anatomy features, and then also just block in some of the base features. And we're not going to get in too much detail in this video. We'll actually get more in. I'm guessing this is going to be a 4-part video series. So, anyways, just kind of continuing to work, build up some of the forms we've already talked about. Get that zygomatic bone in there, working good. And again, we're going to visit all of these later. So next up, nasal cavity, obviously. We're going to just kind of working out from the eyes. It's okay that this is looking kind of muddy. You guys can come over here and smooth it a little bit. If you're smart, you can hit Shift D, go down a couple subdivision levels, right? Smooth it there, and then go up, smooth, etc. And we'll probably end up hitting a lot of this model with the high polish brush and the smooth brush uniformly a little bit later on once we get things going. So anyways, let's go ahead and turn our floor back on, come in here, and what I want to do is I want to start sculpting the nasal bone, right? And it's actually just a small bone right here. That's it. That's the nasal bone. So once we get that guy going, I want to Make sure it's coming out far enough. Okay, and I think in males it tends to stick out a bit more. I think females also have a little bit larger ocular cavities, a little bit more rounded as well. So it's okay if you guys want to make, if you're doing a male one, make these a little bit more rigid and angular contours. Anyways, let's get back to the nasal cavity. I'm just going to, again, hold Alt, start carving in the sides. You'll notice there's a few different things and bones and pieces of cartilage in the inside, bones that, or parts of the bone that cartilage needs to attach to. I think we'll probably end up getting into that in the next video in more detail. I'm starting to run into, you guys, if I turn off the floor and zoom in here, hit Shift F, you can see I'm running into some issues with my polygons, and so eventually I think what we're going to do is we're going to stop working on this part of the nose for now, and then once we go in and ZRemesh and Dynamesh, we'll continue working in more detail. So let's just take a look at it from the side, turn the floor back on. One thing I like to do is take a look at the ocular cavities that we've created, and right now you can see the side of my eye is right here. Now I'm going to hold Control and Shift and just hide this, and there's the side of the eye. I'll undo this. So it looks like my eyes, it's actually not bad. Usually don't get such good results, but I'll just move those forward a little bit, and then we're looking good. One other thing I might do is actually start to move the nasal cavity. Looking at our reference, it comes out quite a bit. So again, nasal bone, that little small guy right there, that guy needs to pop out. And we'll just make that a nice angle. Kind of comes down and angles down inward. All right, cool. Starting to get there. I'm going to turn the floor off and hit P for perspective. One other thing I like to do, guys, is grab the Damien standard brush. And if we make it big enough, we can start to carve in right there and define where that nasal bone is. So there's actually a nice little contour right about there. And then we can come back with our clay tubes brush, start filling this part out, smoothing. Maybe even hitting B and H to grab our high polish brush and start polishing up some of these areas a little bit. So one thing I like to do is that temporal bone, right? If I grab my Damien standard brush, that likes to kind of come around like that. So I'll grab the high polish brush and make it quite large and just kind of start to at least get that flat part in there. We can always move and pull that contour around as we wish, but I just want to block it in there for now. I hit P to go back in orthographic view, turn my floor on, make sure I'm continuing to respect my reference art. Again, if you're matching reference, you can't really go too wrong. Alright, let's go ahead and grab that guy and pull it out. Might even grab the high polish brush and alright, there we go. Okay guys, one thing I want to do is really continue to build out that zygomatic bone and the connection it has to the entire maxilla bone. The maxilla bone kind of comes in here like this and kind of connects to the teeth down here. And then the zygomatic bone is kind of, this guy on the side that connects back here. right? So, and then we've also got the sphenoid bone just kind of coming in there. So keep those in mind. I want to make sure that my floor is on. And again, I don't want to, I really don't want to sculpt into too much detail. I want to still keep things pretty primitive and simple for now. This part here, right, that's pretty flat, so I need to flatten that out, continue to build that into the zygomatic, maybe even coming in here and grabbing my high polish brush and flattening that part out. We can turn off our floor and come back in and see what our results are. Not bad. I know that this needs to flatten out a little bit more. Not be as defined there. Again, every bone is kind of different, right? That actually needs to grab my Damien standard brush. There needs to be a nice ridge there. And I'm going to high polish that sucker, because it comes quite in, almost comes up and touches the ocular cavity a little bit. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and call that good for now, at least. Let me build that part out. There we go. Again, we don't want to get too much into details, and whenever I feel like I'm getting too caught up in the details, I move on to a different part of the model. Right? So that's always good. Okay, so another cool part. We've got the whole mastoid process to worry about. So I'm going to grab snake hook, and coming here and taking a look at this from the side view, it's usually about right here that we can pull down. And then we want to come over into our perspective view and maybe push and pull this guy up a little bit. And here it's going to, so I'm going to grab my clay tubes brush and just kind of start to indent this a little bit. Believe it or not, we've actually got like spinal cord that needs to come up in here, and we've got tendons that need to connect to the jaw and all that fun stuff. We've got muscles that need to attach to all kinds of different things. So pretty complex process going on back here. But we're just gonna, we'll build it up and we'll just keep going as we go. So I'll go down a few subdivision levels to try and start smoothing this crap out. It's getting a little bit crazy down here, but we'll just go. Okay, so I think I've probably exaggerated this a bit too much. So I'm just going to grab the high polish brush and start to slam it down a little bit. And I can also grab the high polish and just kind of, that will help me smooth things out down here in the bottom. Again, I always want to make sure I'm working with nice clean contours. I'm not working too muddy. Not working too thin. Things are looking good. Okay, cool. So we're kind of getting there. I'd actually take the snake hook and pull that back guy out a little bit. Grab the high polish. Okay, cool. So that's good enough for now. I don't want to get into too much detail. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor on, and so our zygomatic bone, I need to continue to make sure that this guy is sculpted in, just looking at my reference here, right? I know that this needs to be indented, so I'm just going to carve this part out, and that'll just, we'll take a look and see why that's important in a second. Smooth that guy. Okay, cool. Maybe carve that guy. That's okay. All right, turn my floor back off. So what we need to do now is the skull actually has like only two different parts that, I mean, it's got actually 9 different bones. We've got like a frontal bone, which is like the big forehead area, right? Then we've got like the parietal bone, which is this big area back here. You've got your, you got all these different areas. We'll continue to talk about those as this series goes on. But the mandible actually, separate, complete separate piece that just is attached at one area and moves back and forth, allows you guys to actually eat and open your mouths, stuff like that. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab my snake hook, and I'm just kind of looking at reference right now, and I want this. Again, I think our model that we're looking at, guys, is a female, right? And I want this to be more male, so I want this just to be a little bit, the jaw to be just a little bit more defined, and this guy to be a little bit less bubbly, and the eyes to be a little bit more angular, and the temporal line to be a little bit more defined. All right, so, okay. Anyways, from here, we need to extract a piece of geometry out for the mandible. So I'm going to collapse my draw menu, go to subtool. Okay, cool. And then I'm just going to hold control and mask this part off. If you want to get rid of the mask, just Control Alt. You guys should know that by now if you're still following along and attempting to sculpt a skull. I assume you know how to do that. So I'm just going to follow that line that I carved in. Carved that in for a reason. And then I might come into my side view, turn the floor back on real quick, just to make sure I'm following this line right here, because I did not put that in earlier. There we go. Turn the floor off. There we go. Bam, done. Almost. Usually what I like to do is hold Control, click on the mask to blur it 2 times, Control Alt, click on the mask to sharpen it 2 times. Kind of negates any of the waviness that I had going on. And then I'll just delete any areas that I don't want to extract. I don't want to get too close to surfaces that aren't flat, because it will extrude in the normal direction of those faces. So that's cool. Alright, fantastic. Let's go ahead and actually I got a few guys down here that I don't want. Alright, let's just blur it, sharpen it, test it out. So I'm going to come down here and say extract. Thickness is set to 0.02. It's obviously way too thin. Hit P for perspective mode so I can take a look at this. Let's go to 0.1. Extract. Way too much. 0.05. Extract. This is probably pretty good. Let's hit accept. So clear the mask. Select my other subtool. Clear the mask. Now if I hit Shift F, this guy's fantastic. Yes, you have different polygroups. Way to go, man. But what I need to do is I'm just going to come down here and ZRemesh this immediately. And actually I should undo that because I did not have symmetry on when I did that. So make sure I hit X to turn symmetry on, then hit ZRemesher. Now each side is similar. So now I can subdivide, smooth, and I've got some easy uniform smoothing going on. So we've got it's not bad for a mandible. We'll call it good. Grab my high polish brush and just start to flatten some areas out, define some areas, etc. That's for you, Rob. Use the flatten brush to flatten. Alright, cool. Alright, so I'm going to make my original mesh visible, and then I'm also going to give my mandible a little bit of thickness so I don't end up collapsing myself sculpting. So I'm just going to come down here to inflate, and we could do inflate balloon, see what that does. Or I guess we'll just inflate then for this time being. So that's great. I'm actually going to end up scaling that back in once once we delete the geometry from the rest of the cranium. Now this video is coming up on a half-hour long, and I don't like these to go that long because I like to break them up quite a bit. So next part of the video, we're going to continue to talk about anatomy. I guess part 3, we're going to continue to talk about anatomy. We're going to clean up some of the geometry in the cranium. We're going to define a few more of the bones. We're going to delete part of this Z tool and get the teeth in there maybe, and then probably after that we'll make another video and then go into like crazy, you know, rendering and detail sculpting, surface noise, crack brushes, all that kind of stuff. So anyways, hopefully I'm hoping you guys are learning something. If not, it's okay, whatever. It's not good. But hopefully you guys are learning something, and thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.